And when it comes to business, the people who tell the best stories, they win. Even if it comes to in sales, in marketing, or in leadership.
That's so true, Camilla, and now I'm really motivated. Because the biggest passion of our keynote speaker has been storytelling. She is a sought-after speaker, Wall Street Journal best-selling author at Chief Storytelling Officer at Success Magazine. Welcome, Kindra Hall.
Hey there, Zinzino. I am so thrilled to be able to be here with you today. I cannot tell you. My name is Kindra Hall. As you might have heard, I am the best-selling author of the book Stories That Stick. And yes, my entire expertise is in the power of stories. Sometimes I use the job title professional storyteller, which I know as a title sounds unusual at best, but I don't know about you, maybe you've felt this way before, but I'm one of those people who I didn't find a job, but rather my career found me. It feels much more like a calling than anything else. And I will tell you, I first got the call. I first discovered the power of strategic storytelling, which is what we will be talking about, at a very young age. I was 11 years old when I told my first story. Now, I was in 5th grade, and 11, 12 years old, I don't know about you, but those were the beginning of the difficult years, if you will. It was the beginning of the awkwardness, because you were just at that point of trying to figure out who you are. Like, who is Kindra? What do I like? What do I not like? What am I called to do? What is the difference I can make in the world? Now, maybe I didn't use all of those words when I was 11 years old, but still that question, that curiosity was within me. And when you're 11, it can feel a little bit weird. And for me, it was made even more difficult because I had this best friend who was perfect. And she seemed to just have it all figured out. Zero awkwardness. Now, first of all, she was absolutely gorgeous. She had this long blonde hair and more importantly, these big brown eyes that could turn green when she needed them to. It was the strangest thing. You'd be looking at her and all of a sudden her eyes would just change color. And it was mesmerizing. And the girls loved her because she was kind and loyal and supportive. And the teachers loved her because she was energetic and engaged. And the boys, I mean, let's face it, 11, 12 is when you first start thinking about boys as a young girl, and all of the boys loved her. Like, if a 5th grade boy could go to a tattoo parlor and have a name tattooed across their arm, they all would have had her name, because even her name was perfect. Molly. Yes, it's a perfect 5th grade name. And I remember walking down the wide hallways at my elementary school, side by side with my best friend Molly, because girls can never go to the bathroom alone, especially not in 5th grade, when the principal, the head of the school, would come walking towards us. And I remember every single time he would stop and he would do this thing with his hands on his hips, and he would see Molly, well, he would see Molly and I, and he would go, "Hey, Molly, Molly," which, looking back, was maybe a little inappropriate, but nevertheless, I don't think he meant anything by it. He would stop, he would say, "Hey, Molly, Molly," and then the bigger offense was he would just keep walking, like I wasn't even there. And I knew it wasn't Molly's fault. She was just being a Molly. It wasn't the principal's fault. It wasn't even necessarily my own fault, except that I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mother after school, in the evenings, sometimes before school, and just crying. I wanted so badly to be Molly, to have whatever it was that Molly had that made her so special. Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, I couldn't be Molly. The only people we can ever be are ourselves. And fortunately for me, at the very end of that school year, my teacher had a lesson for all of us. It was a lesson in storytelling. Each of us, fifth graders, were to choose a children's book and then go read that book to a third or a fourth grade class. I chose the book, The Giant's Big Toe. Not a huge bestseller, but nevertheless, I chose that book. And I remember walking into my third grade classroom, the class that I was supposed to read this book to. And it was right at the end of the day. It was right at the end of the school year. And the third graders were absolutely out of control. They were bouncing off the walls. They were picking bugs off each other. And the teacher was sitting in the back of the room thinking, please, just let the parents take them away. And I knew I had my work cut out for me. So I made a split-second decision that changed my life. I decided to put the book down. And instead of reading it off the page, I decided to simply tell the story, the real story. And within the first few sentences, I held those third graders in the palm of my hand. And I'll admit, I kind of liked the power. I knew right then and there at 11 years old that maybe I was onto something. If I wanted my voice to be heard, if I wanted to get my message out there, even though I still wasn't exactly clear what my message was, maybe I didn't have to fight with or try to be like anyone else. Maybe all I needed to do was to tell stories. And so I did. And the truth is, I didn't go back to fifth grade after that point. I went to every single classroom in that school. All of the teachers wanted to hear my story. My name was in lights. Kindra is the giant's big toe, which didn't help in terms of my popularity score, but it didn't matter because I remember one of the very last days of primary school, walking down those wide elementary school hallways side by side with my best friend Molly when the principal approached us. And he couldn't help himself. He did the whole, hey, Molly, Molly thing. But then he looked to me and he said, and Kindra, I heard you've been telling some great stories. Keep it up. And so I did. And now I'm here. My entire life's work has been digging deeper into the power stories have, both outwardly in business and inwardly as we work to transform ourselves. Now, I know what is at stake for you is much bigger than, silly fifth grade identity crises, but I'm pretty sure that the transformation you're looking to make, whether that's within yourself or within the community, the people around you, it's big. And I want to teach you here today and in our master class coming up in the following session, how to lean in to these stories, how to harness the power your stories have. Because after all, stories are what stick. All right, are you excited or what? You know what the good news is? It doesn't matter if you are excited. I have enough excitement for all of us when it comes to the power of storytelling. So here's what the rest of our time together here in this session is going to cover. Now, before I get into that, I want to let you know that in the masterclass, we are going to dive deeper into the storytelling process, how to find stories, how to craft stories, and where you should be telling them. So make sure you tune in to that session. But for right now, here's what we need to cover. First, in order for you to harness the power of your stories, it's really important that you understand fully, thoroughly, why storytelling works so well. What's happening when we tell stories? What's happening when we hear stories? And the reason for this is, you know, there's probably a good chance that you've heard about the importance of storytelling in this business before this time, right here, right now. And great storytelling is going to require an investment of your time and your energy, of your brain power. I want you to know that little bit of extra effort is worth it, can make a huge transformation in your business. From there, we're going to talk about what a story really is. Now, storytelling, as I mentioned in business, has become a bit of a buzzword. Now, that's great for me. It means job security in my made-up job. People buy my books. My dad is finally proud of me. But where it becomes a problem is anytime a word becomes a buzzword, the definition gets watered down to the point where we don't even really know if we're telling a story or not. So I have a case study I want to show you so you can see the difference a story makes. And lastly, I want to share with you the most important story of all. When it comes to transformation, you know better than anyone, physical transformation happens from the inside out. So does our mental, our emotional, our personal transformation. If you can get a grasp on those stories, there's no turning back. All right, let's do this. First, why does storytelling work so well? Well, there are several reasons. The first reason storytelling works so well is really quite simple. It really comes down to science. Now, I know all of you in Zinzino you recognize the power of the body, of our balances, of our chemicals, and this is, knowing that, this is what makes storytelling so effective. Humans are programmed to want to hear stories. This is what our biology is longing for. This is how we make sense of the world, and it is so deep within us that we can't help ourselves, which is why storytelling is such an incredible strategy in the work that you do in spreading the message of what you offer here at Zinzino. Now, neurologist Paul Zak wanted to put the power of storytelling to the test to see if there was a change in our brain chemistry when we hear a story. So here's what he did. He gathered a group of test subjects. He drew their blood so he would have a control, and then he brought them into a room and played for them a short video. Now, the video told a story. There was a beginning, a middle, and an end. There were characters to care about. There was an emotional component. That's very important. And then afterwards, he drew their blood again. And what he found was raised levels of two very important chemicals, cortisol and oxytocin. Now, why does this matter to you? Well, first of all, cortisol is responsible, and a myriad of other things, but for increased focus and attention. Now let me ask you, how many of you have ever been sitting down at a face-to-face meeting with someone? Maybe it's virtual, maybe it's in person. Maybe you're talking to your teenage kid, right? And you're going through all of the information and the details, and you can see the people looking at you. But you know they are far, far away. Like they've zoned out. They're thinking about what they're going to make for dinner or where they want to go on their next vacation, if that's possible. We've all had this happen before, and it might even be happening for you right now as I'm going through the step-by-step of the research. But I want you to think about how you were listening to this presentation right here. When I was telling you the story of my best friend, Molly, you were right here in the palm of my hand. Because your brain makes you listen. If you are trying to have your voice be heard, to leave your legacy, to share this message in a way that more and more people have enough room in their attention to take it in, rely on stories. With stories, you're not trying to get people's attention. They will give it to you. And of course, there is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is known as the trust hormone. This is how we increase empathy and emotion. This is how we build connections and relationships between people. This is how we care. Now think about that. If you're trying to bridge gaps between you and someone else, you and a community, you and somebody's understanding of the product or what's available, by telling a story, you release, the listener will release that oxytocin, and it pulls them that much faster across the bridge. So you can be together, connected. Now again, this is something humans can't help. So tap in to the power of story and see what the possibilities are. Now, the second reason storytelling is such an effective strategy is stories have the innate ability to communicate the true value of something. Not necessarily how much it costs or what the logic of it all is or the facts and the bullet points, but rather what this really means in somebody's life. One well-told story will outshine any exchange of information. And actually, anthropologists wanted to put this to the test as well, to see, what do people buy? Do they buy the thing, or do they buy the story of what the thing will mean in their lives? So here's what these anthropologists did. They gathered a collection of 200 objects. Now, you can see on the screen that they spent a total of $250 American. And, you know, for 200 objects, that is very little money to spend. But then they took each one of these objects and they put them up on eBay with a story to see what people would pay for them. Let's take a look at a few. This is a used pink horse toy. All right, clearly from the 80s, judging by its very large hair. It's got some hot pink hooves and some silver leg warmers. Now, I do want to point out, I want to make sure that this is very clear to all of you. Things from the 80s are not vintage. Okay? Can we agree on that? Please. This is not a vintage horse. This is just an old used horse. But they bought this horse for $1. They put it up on eBay with a story. And the story was of a woman whose daughter had gone off to university. She dropped her daughter off at school, came home, started to consolidate some of her daughter's belongings, and she came across this pink horse toy. And the mother remembered how the daughter would trot that horse across the windowsill as she waited for her parents to come home from work. Sweet story, sentimental story. Someone bought this horse for $104.50. Now that's American dollars, and it is completely unreasonable for an old used toy. What did someone buy? They didn't buy the horse. They bought the story of sentimentality, of what that horse represented. Now, let's take a look at one more. This is my favorite one because this is my favorite story. This is a globe paperweight. Now, you can see it there compared to the size of the penny. It's not enormous. It's not super fancy. Like, it would hold a couple sheets of paper in a light breeze, but don't open the window too wide. Now, they bought this paperweight for $1.49. They put it up on eBay with a story. And the story was of a woman who had dreamed of falling in love and traveling the world. And that dream came true. And every city they went to, every stop they made, he bought her a little treasure, a small little knickknack, a symbol of this great love and adventure that they shared. And that relationship had ended. And the woman was heartbroken. And she knew that the only way to move on would be to let go of each of the gifts he had given her. So she put them up on eBay, and this was the final one. And it was her hope. Yes, I'm trying to keep a straight face. It was her hope that whoever purchased this mediocre at best paperweight would experience the same sense of love and adventure she had once found and hoped to find again. I know, that's a great story, isn't it? Someone bought this paperweight for $197.50. Who thought it was going for more? Like, I thought that is a $400 US paperweight, because why? Now, if they had just put it up on eBay with the measurements and how much it weighed, nobody would have spent that much money. What the person bought online wasn't the paperweight. They bought the symbol, the hope for love and adventure. And for $197.50, that's a great price. I've tried to buy love and adventure for less than that, and that story did not end well. Remember, people never say yes to the thing. They say yes to the story of what that thing will mean in their lives. Now, it isn't very fair of me to show this to you without revealing the final results. You'll remember that they spent $250 American dollars. They made 8,000 American dollars. That is a 3,100% increase on their efforts. I'm not sure what your goals are for the rest of the year and into 2022, but I hope that you trust the science on this one and choose to tell your story. The final reason storytelling is such an important strategy is that storytelling has a leveraging point that no other form of information exchange or communication has, and that is the storytelling process is a co-creative one. So, as I am telling you my story, for example, you are creating your own version of it in your mind. You're taking memories and images from your life, adding it to my words, and as a result, we create this shared entity. And because you actively participate in the creation of that story, it will stay with you longer. Let me ask you, when I was telling you the story about 5th grade, about my primary school and my best friend Molly, how many of you were picturing your best friend? I can feel your heads nodding right now. Or as I was talking about the wide school hallways, how many of you saw the hallways of your primary or elementary schools? Yes. The reason is, I know what I'm doing. I know that by giving you this information, by sharing it in the form of a story, you will meet me halfway. And as a result, I will stay with you longer. Rudyard Kipling said it, if history were taught in the form of story, it would never be forgotten. And I am quite certain that you don't do what you do. You don't reach out to new customers. You don't engage with your team of partners to be forgotten. You are here to leave a legacy. The best way to do that is with the stories you tell. All right, so all of those great things that a story can do, and yet there is a problem. Often when the stakes are highest, when it matters most, we default back to traditional information exchange. We talk about the details, we talk about the logic, when what we really need to do is be telling a story. Now, the problem is we have lost the meaning of what a story really looks like, and as a result, we miss key opportunities for telling them. So what I'd like to do for you right now is show you a case study, a side-by-side before and after video of a brand who thought they were telling a story, and then what happened when they actually did. Now, the brand is called Soul Carrier. You can see here it has nothing to do with what you do. It's a purse company. But what I want you to keep an eye on here is this is a video she had on the front page of her website that told her story. Now, I hope you can tell by the large air quotes, she does not tell a story. Okay, she thought she was telling a story, but she wasn't. I want you to watch this video, and afterwards, we'll talk about it.
Close your eyes.
Okay.
Breathe.
Hi, story. All right, ready? Yeah.
What does the Journey Collection mean to you?
It means I'm being who I was born to be. I'm creating and I'm designing and I'm living my dreams, and this is the ripple effect of just finally getting to the place of doing what I so passionately love and want to be. A lot of people view me as the girl who lost my parents in college, and I was a girl that was supposed to carry on Paisan and Joyce's legacy, but deep down, I want to be me. I want to be Jennifer Page. I want people to look at me and be like, she listened to her own intuition, she listened to her heart, and she followed her dreams. Soul Carrier is a fashion brand and it designs handbags, but it's so much more than that. I want it to be about encouraging young people to be who they are, to follow their dreams, and to not get swept up in the white noise, but to know that if there's something what they want to do, to go after it and do it with all their heart and all their passion. If you're doing what you're meant to do, you will get there.
All right, so let me ask you, what'd you think? It wasn't bad, right? Can we say that? It's okay to say that, even though you know it's the before video, so you know it's supposed to be the bad one. It really wasn't that bad, and I think that's an important thing to say. You can do pretty good things and not tell a story. Now, you can do great things with stories. But what I want to talk to you about first is the biggest mistake that happens when it comes to storytelling in business, and that is we allude to the story. We don't actually tell it. We mention there's a story there, but we don't tell the story, so we don't get an opportunity to reap all the benefits I spent the whole first part of this presentation discussing. Let me ask you, did you hear what the story might have been? That she lost her parents? Yes. But she didn't tell that story. So she kept going and you kept going, and what we got was a pretty good video. Don't you wonder the difference a story would have made? Well, good news. You don't have to wonder. We have an after video. It turns out this moment with her parents really was the catalyst, her why moment, if you will. I want you to watch this video as she tells her story and see if you can tell the difference telling the story makes.
Suppose my story starts like anyone else's. My parents wanted what was best for me and not to have to experience the struggles that they did. I pursued a business degree, and then afterwards I planned to pursue law school. Then when I was 21, my life changed. I woke to find myself hanging upside down by my seatbelt. My family's SUV had flipped over several times, hitting the base of a concrete billboard before coming to a stop. Both my parents were taken from me that day. My mom was killed instantly, and my dad died hours later in the hospital. I knew that saying goodbye to two people I loved would be hard, but what I wasn't expecting was how hard the aftermath would be. Everyone was wondering what I would become in light of this tragedy. There was a lot of pressure, scrutiny, a lot of noise. I'll never forget the last words my mother said to me. She was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, and seconds before the accident happened, she turned around and she said to me, "Where do you want to go?" The next moment was chaos, and she never even got to finish that sentence. But her voice, that question, "Where do you want to go?" is forever frozen in my memory. I decided the best way to honor my parents is to find the answer that worked for me, for Jennifer Page, not for anyone else. Soul Carrier is the manifestation of that. Every handbag I design is created to serve as a daily reminder, to ignite people to do what they're meant to do. I don't know where you'll be when someone asks you that question, "Where do you want to go?" Or if you will have to ask it of yourself. But when that day comes, I hope that Soul Carrier can be a reminder to tune out the noise and to choose the path you were meant for.
Let me ask you, could you tell the difference? It was shocking, right? Don't you feel differently about those purses? Doesn't the name Soul Carrier mean something different to you? That is the power of the story, making it mean everything that it's meant to mean. Now, there are two people that I'd like to talk to right now after playing that video for you. The first person is the one who watched that video and thought to themselves, I have a story that big. I have a story that is that hard to tell. And maybe you tell it already, or maybe you're not sure if you should. What I want to encourage you to do is explore that story. And if you do decide to tell it, only tell it on your own time. But number two, also know that that story could be a gift to someone else. And the second person I want to talk to in this room here today is the person who watched that video and thought to themselves, or has thought to themselves before, I don't have a story that big. I don't have a story at all. Who would want to hear my story? And to you, I say, I started this entire presentation with a story about my best friend when I was 11 years old. It isn't the magnitude of a story that matters. It's the decision to tell a story that will yield for you all of the benefits that are waiting when you choose to tell a story. All right, there is one last thing I need to talk to you about here today. Keep in mind, in my masterclass session, I will be going into a deep dive on how you find stories, how you craft them, and all the different options for telling them. But for right now, I want to talk to you about the most important story of all. If what we're here for right now is to lean into transformation, becoming and being the best versions of ourselves. I know that you have the power to do that physically, but there's also an emotional component, a mental component, a very personal component. And in that way, the most important story you can ever tell is the story you tell yourself. Now, make no mistake, all day, every day, we have stories running through our minds. These stories are invisible. These stories happen automatically. They are subconscious, and the reality is, because of our natural bias towards safety, our negativity bias, our ancient brains wanting to keep us in line and not risk too much, these stories that are on repeat are often negative. They're stories of the times that we've failed. They're the stories of the times we didn't quite measure up. up. They're the stories that leave you with that feeling of doubt, of not being enough, of never becoming, of being able to transform into the person you think you want to be. And it isn't until you get control of these stories and choose to tell different ones that your life really can transform. This is what the majority of my work and research is focused on right now. The fact that if you choose to tell yourself different stories, you can change your life. So for example, I don't know if any of you have limiting beliefs. I have a limiting belief, this thought, this negative spiral that my brain goes into, especially as a hardworking, ambitious mother, is that I'm selling my kids short. I'm a bad mother, that maybe I should slow down, maybe I shouldn't be as ambitious, I'm doing something wrong because I'm following this other calling, which is to be with all of you. And these doubts, these beliefs can pop up at any given time, and they can take me down. They can hold me back, either from future success or from simply experiencing the joy of my current situation. It happened to me very recently. Those negative stories were running rampant, and knowing what I know now, I chose to stop it. And there's this story, well, there are several stories, but one of my favorite stories I choose to tell myself when I feel those limiting beliefs, those doubts taking over, is one from many years ago. My daughter is now 9 years old. She was about 3, and I was just starting my entrepreneurial journey. And I was stressed. I was questioning myself, feeling a lot of doubt. And I was sitting on her bedroom floor with her. We were building something out of blocks. And she looked at me and she said, "Mama, we are building a castle." Now, there were some architectural issues with the castle. It was a little crooked, but all the same, I loved her creativity. And she looked at me again and said, "And Mama, we live in this castle because we are 2 princesses," which, to be seen as a princess by your daughter, is an innately special thing. But then she looked at me one more time. Her eyes narrowed a little bit. Her eyebrows came down, and she said, "And it's a big castle, Mama, because we are 2 princesses who go to work." And in that moment, a story was born. A story I tell myself to remind myself that maybe what I'm doing isn't a disservice, but rather maybe what I'm doing by pursuing this passion, following this calling, is teaching my children to dream bigger. And that is a story I am okay with. So what stories do you choose to tell yourself on the days you need them most? Oh, my friends, we have been through a lot here together in this very short amount of time. You now know why storytelling works so well, what a story is and what it isn't, and the most important story any of us can be telling, and that is the story we tell ourselves. It is my hope that no matter what wide hallways you walk down, no matter who is at your side or how big the castles are that you build, that you transform into everything you know you can be, because every day you choose to tell your story. Thank you so much for being here with me. I can't wait to see you in the masterclass.